Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And of course, I want to thank the 8 Black Hands podcast for joining us tonight. And while I'm thanking people, I must make sure that we thank Stinkos for this beautiful venue that you afforded us this evening. You can give them a hand. And also Zenada's Cafe, and you will enjoy their catering at our networking reception following this right afterwards. So I do want to give you some background real quickly for those of you that I've not had the opportunity to meet. I'm Patricia Cunningham. I host the Patricia Cunningham Show on KCEP. And last weekend, I had a couple of members of the 8 Black Hands podcast on the show. And to give you real quick background, I've been hosting that show for over 25 years. And during that 25 years, I've served as a panelist on various television shows here in town and temporarily hosted the show on Channel 10, which is the Nevada Week in Review. And during all of that time, there were a lot of people that I interviewed. There were presidents, Congressional Black Caucus members, a lot of high-profile people. And I say that to tell you this. During that entire time, there are 2 guests that I can remember that we sat back and allowed them just to talk. That was Johnny Cochran and Congressman John Lewis. There's a 3rd guest that I would add to that, and that's the 8 Black Hands. I am still getting responses from people from that conversation, and I'm here to tell you that in all of the years that we've been talking about education, these are the people that showed us that maybe we aren't asking the right questions. We were just too focused on the answers. So I say to you, you're going to have an experience tonight, if you've not heard their podcast, that you will never forget. These are gentlemen that are giving us a very needed conversation that we have to have about educating Black and brown children. These men are educated, passionate, successful, and woke. What a combination. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Charles Cole, Charles Citizen Stewart, Raymond Ankrum, and Sharif El-Mekki, 8 Black Hands.
Can we all people applause one for her, please, and the work that she's doing? Can you make her feel it? This is her home turf. Make her feel it, y'all. Thank you so much. Can you not be so objecting to them? I'm glad your mic cut off on you. It should have. So, for some of you all that's new to the 8 Black Hands, welcome. This podcast is a little different than most. We don't agree on everything. Actually, we don't agree a lot. So you will see us kind of have some back and forth banter. I know that I think that they told you all that they can text in questions or whatnot, but we just hope that you all have a good time. You're gonna hear some really honest dialogue. This is like a conversation we would have if nobody was watching, and we just have an undying love and unapologetic love for Black community and Black kids, and we know that Black kids need what they need. So we normally don't do this, but I know some of y'all, this is the first time, so from that end to this end, I actually want folks to just introduce themselves so you know who you're talking to and listening to. So Ray, can you start us off?
I go last.
See, I'm so happy your mic don't work.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 6 Black
Chris, why don't you start while we get his mic working?
No, don't get it working. Hey, bro, I'm good. I'm a teacher.
No, but we gotta record, brother. Here, so hand it to me.
It's a pop. I'm not going first. Hottest MC goes last.
Here, use that. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
All right, Pittsburgh was a little better. Hello, everybody. Oh, okay, now it's lit. All right.
Did you say it's lit?
It is.
That's what the kids say these days, right? That's what the kids say these
You
days.
probably shouldn't say that though.
Listen, it's the age I'm at now. I'm walking around the house all the time, following my kids saying, "Well, like, what was that you said?" And I pick it up. I use it for a few days.
That's what's up.
Yeah. So Lit just caught up with me. Just now.
You know, Lit is about to leave.
That's when I usually catch up things. I get stuff off the clearance rack of words, right? So that's when I pick them up, when they're cheap enough. I am Chris Stewart. Online, I'm known as Citizen Stewart. I tweet a lot about education, specifically around issues pertaining to the 8 million black children in the United States who I always say are walking into the public schools every day that were not built for them and are not ready to help them reach their highest potential. And I don't think that we have a more pressing problem than that to discuss, which mystifies me because it's the one thing we don't discuss enough. We allow people to get elected as mayors without ever touching an education question. We allow people to run for president without ever having to say anything about the 8 million black children who are walking into public schools every day that aren't ready for them. Is that good enough?
That was great, brother. That was
Thank
great. Yeah.
Yeah, go last. Yeah.
Don't let me go at all.
Sharif El-Mekki, I'm from Philadelphia, West Philly to be exact. Great to be here. Excited to be here. I was a principal and a teacher for 26 years. I just left my school. It was a turnaround charter school in the neighborhood I grew up with. It was failing. It failed people's grandparents. It failed their children. Then it was failing grandchildren. And some people were comfortable with that because they didn't have to put their kids there. They didn't live in that zip code. And so throughout my career, that's really been a big part of my work, is around this idea of educational justice and how mandating that people go to a zip code-based school is, everyone wants to talk about like what's anti-democratic, that's anti-democratic. And so this idea of educational justice is one part, but then the other one is this school activism pipeline, because I think that students and families aren't given transparent data enough so that they can make decisions about where they want to put their children. Because the folks who have the data, they know exactly where they're putting their kids.
Thank you, Sharif. I'm Charles Cole. I'm out of Oakland.
Dr. Charles Cole.
Dr. Charles Cole.
Dr. Charles Cole.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know what? Because when you say that, and then people are like, oh, look at this bougie Negro, right? Calling himself doctor, right? Like, I don't do it, and then they do it, and you're like, he said he was a doctor 3 times. I didn't say it. But anyway, I'm Charles Cole.
It's better when we say it.
I am Charles Cole from Oakland, California. I started my career as a social worker. I did work as a youth development organizer. I did work after that in the school district. I worked at Teach for America. And now I also sit on the board of UCSF Benioff Hospitals. We oversee $4 billion of hospitals in California, in the Bay Area. The Chase Center, where the Warriors play, is actually on our campus. And I was one of those kids that was failed. And I went to 11 schools. I went to 11 elementary schools. And a lot of those places, now that I know what quality looks like, I didn't experience quality. And y'all numbers just came out. And I don't think black kids here are experiencing quality either. And I think folks are scared to talk about it. So tonight we're gonna tell the truth and shame the devil. So with that, because Ray wanted to go last, I hope his mic still ain't working, but we're gonna hand it over to Ray the Republican.
Yes, I will confirm that I am a Republican. But I would have
He ain't
voted for
joking either. Look at their eyes.
I'm but listen.
I still don't believe it.
I'm not a Donald Trump Republican. I'm more like a John McCain Republican. It's different.
John McCain passed away, bro.
Yeah, but still, like, just under that umbrella.
All right.
I would have voted for Harry Reid and Harry Reid run for president.
That's what's up. Can you finish your introduction, Kanye?
All right. So I'm Ray Ankrum. I am the superintendent of a charter school on Long Island, Riverhead Charter School. I began teaching in 2003 in Baltimore City Public Schools. And so you can teach in Baltimore, you can teach anywhere. That's a fact. My first administration job was at Democracy Prep in Harlem, the flagship campus prior to anything else happening.
You hating on the Agassiz?
No. I'm giving them a plug. They got 31% proficient and 47% proficient in English and math, and that's better than the 20% proficient that black folks over and around. And
Shade.
Yeah, I think it is.
I'm just saying shade.
A little bit.
So even further. I'm a charter school advocate. Charter schools are public schools, so that's a misconception that they want y'all to have, is that any school that gets public funding is a public school, and charter schools get public school funding. My kids go to my school, right? So like, I'm not one of those people that's like, all right, well, I'm gonna be a principal of a school, but that school is not good enough for my kid to go there, right? I feel like that's extremely important. If you have leaders of schools, the leader of that school will tell you a lot about themselves if they will allow their kids to go to that school. That means you believe in it. That means that you believe in what you're doing, right? So anybody that makes an excuse about, oh, well, my kid doesn't go here because of this or because of that or whatever, you don't believe in the work you're doing. That's just my opinion.
Right, well, let me. I'm about to say we gotta get into the show, brother.
Well, first, before we get into the show, I want to disagree with that. I was a principal, and you know what? I got 6 kids. 3 of them, I ain't want to come to my school. I didn't want to see them in my school. I didn't want to get them to get the teacher. My teachers were being successful. I got a daughter who she would be like, I don't care if my daddy upstairs and the principal watched it. Like, nah, she didn't need that. I believe that people should be able to choose what's the right situation for their child. So
that's your opinion.
So before y'all start talking about all y'all kids,
Wait a second.
Bro, you're listening.
You go into a restaurant, you sit down, you open the menu. The waitress comes by, or the waiter comes by, and you say, how's the soup? And he's like, I don't know, I don't eat none of this mess. Do you stay?
I think all of you have asked the waiter, what do you recommend? Who's asked that? And he doesn't recommend or she doesn't recommend every single thing.
No, you get Chris's point is, I don't eat none of this stuff.
None of it.
Well,
I don't eat none of it.
In that case, I agree with Rick. What I'm saying is that just because I'm a principal doesn't mean that my 6 kids have to go to my school for it to be a good school. My job is to make sure that my bar for that school is at the right bar for my child. But if I say, you know what, this child is actually, my school wasn't based on arts. But if I have a child that is like gifted in the arts, I'm not gonna say, well, to prove a point to Ray Ingram, I'm gonna put, you gotta go here. No.
Sounds like you're shooting yourself down, bro.
There's a school over there for the arts, and that's the best fit for you.
Get arts for your school.
I don't know why I host this show. They don't listen, man. So we are here to serve these people. These people want to hear about Nevada. So let me set up the conversation, all right? So there are 3 narratives that are live in Nevada right now, in this area specifically, that we're gonna go through, and then I'm gonna go through some quick facts just to lay the conversation, and then y'all can just be as terrible as you want to be, all right? So the first narrative, right, is that there's not enough money here, that the low per pupil amount is the reason why we don't have high achievement. That's one narrative we heard.
So let me stop you.
Another narrative, wait man, let me lay out the premise. Damn. The second narrative is that public school performance got lower and is low because there was a drastic demographic shift, meaning more black folks moved here. And I know that because a lot of those black folks came from the Bay Area because it got to be too expensive. So that's another narrative that's out there, and I think people will take real issue with that one. And then the third narrative is that families are not involved enough and the schools can't do it on their own, which is another reason why performance is so low. Some facts just to set the conversation for you gentlemen. This Clark County has 73,000 students in it. They had a 2 out of 10 are on grade level for reading and for math. This place ranked 35th in the country for academic achievement and had a national score of a D+. And according to Nevada schools performance frameworks, black students are the lowest proficiency group at under 20%. So fellas, now that we've laid that out there, let's talk about the first narrative, right? The first narrative of there isn't enough money because the per pupil spending is so low, and that's one of the reasons why they don't have higher achievement.
That's a lie.
You've been trying to jump in the whole time I was talking. You finally get a chance to talk. Now your head just shining and you just looking at these people. Say something. God We got Republicans, man. Go ahead, anybody else? Go ahead.
I mean, the first thing, here's not the only place with that narrative, right? Because a lot of folks think that if you have a whole lot of money, that your expectations automatically rise. If you have low expectations for black children, and you get a gazillion dollars, you still have low expectations for black children. That can't be bought. Like a broken mindset about children, particularly other people's children, can't be bought off. And I don't care how much money they get. And I can give you a perfect example. New Jersey gets hella funding. When I look at Philadelphia's funding and I compare it to New Jersey, it's like Philadelphia. It's like me looking at the suburb. One of the wealthiest, suburbs in the country is Lower Merion, outside of Philadelphia. Like New Jersey is rivaling that. But if you look at Camden, where the Black and Latino students are, so it doesn't measure up. And I'm not saying that it should be more fun. I think there should be equitable, sustained, predictable funding, absolutely. I think people should be funded based off of the needs. But if we don't fix and ensure that the people who are leading schools and districts and classrooms think about these black and brown children in a way that's respectful, in a way that they would want someone else to treat their child, that's anti-racist, then it's going to be something. It's going to be it's not going to change.
Thanks, Reeve.
So we were talking about this earlier, like kind of pre-gaming to get ready for you guys. And so part of the conversation was, what would it look like if 20%, if it was 20% proficient with white students?
It wouldn't be that way.
Of course not, right? And that's what we were saying. And so the importance of us standing up for our black babies is so important, right? And so we were also saying, what would it look like if the 20% of proficient white kids were being led by all black school leaders? What would that look like?
It would never happen.
It would never happen, number one, and number two, how much of a stream would they have in order to still have
I
jobs?
think we're about to have 10 black men. I think we're about to change the show right now.
That's what's up, man.
Well, let me say something about this. I'm going to say two things that sound contradictory, but I think they're both parallel. On one hand, anybody who tells you that money doesn't matter is crazy, right? Money matters in everything. You are right that there are school districts like in San Francisco, for instance, and in New York, where they're getting an amount of money per pupil that everybody would be envious of having, and they're still doing very poorly. But that can't be an argument ever for saying that money doesn't matter, because money matters, right? States need to clean up the way that they fund special education. They need to straighten up the way that they give money to districts based on whether those districts are poor or rich.
This win is coming.
Right,
I feel like it's about to come.
right. So that.
No, go ahead, Chris. I'm waiting.
Well,
for
you got
this next part.
to have balance in life, right? That's my balancing that side. Don't tell me that money doesn't matter, because it does, right? But what you said earlier is true. Even when you get money, I mean, there are Texas school districts that are spending $80 and $90 million on stadiums, right?
For high school football.
High school football stadiums, right? There are school boards that are signing contracts that they know they can't afford, right? There are there are districts that have more consultants than teachers, right? Right? So the way you spend your money is important too, but none of that.
Lawsuits is
And paying out, I mean, Los
$300 million.
$300 million. That's what Los Angeles paid out in sex settlements, right?
School district.
The school district, $300 million is what they have paid out in sex settlements. That could fund an entire school district somewhere else, right?
I don't see them striking because of that.
Right? Well, you're not going to see them striking about that, right? Because they don't want to touch it. But at the same time, let me say this. Getting the money will not fix broken systems of how we train teachers, how we get them into the classroom, how we monitor them, how we support them, how we let them go when they need to be invited to be successful somewhere else other than the classroom, right? That won't be fixed just by having money, right? It won't fix the curriculum, the pedagogy, the racist underpinnings of what the American public education system is, and no one will say it. The system is rigged from the bottom to the top, from the top to the bottom. It's been rigged. right? Why are we still holding on to this and embracing it like it's ours? Like we built it and like it's our thing. It never has been, never will be, and until we reclaim the intellectual development of our own children, we are not going